So without further ado, first of all, let me introduce Sami El Yousef. Sami I've known for several years. Obviously, Peter's known him longer than I. Sami is a good friend of ours. We've done a lot of work together. Sami's position as Chief Executive Officer of the Latin Patriarchate. And I think, Sami, am I right in saying you're the first layperson to have that role?
That is
Uh,
correct.
okay, and before that, you were in the Pontifical Mission, heading that unit. So you've spent your life supporting social work and social support for the Christian community across the Holy Land, and that's why we do work alongside each other. We can talk a little bit about that. Sami, could I ask you to start us off?
Certainly. Thank you, Brendan, for the invitation, and thank you all for being with us this evening. Brendan gave me almost an impossible task. He said you have about 10 minutes and you need to speak about the impact of the war on society at large, on the Christian community, on Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and what the Latin Patriarchate is doing. So I'll try to be as brief as possible so that I try to be as close as possible to the time slot allotted to me. I'll start with Gaza. Of course, I'm sure you've been following the news, otherwise you wouldn't be here tonight. Gaza is a devastated strip of land where nothing remains standing, almost nothing remains standing. The destruction has been so widespread that you hardly find any roads to drive on, any buildings that are standing. Most schools, hospitals, infrastructure has completely been destroyed. Businesses destroyed. No infrastructure, as I said. No electricity. No running water. No sewage system at all. Outbreak of diseases. Outbreak of hunger. And people under continuous shelling almost 24/7, in a sense, for the past 11 years. So honestly, I don't know how these people continue to survive under these circumstances, but they do. And they still have hope, and they're really our heroes as far as we're concerned. As far as the Christian community is concerned, their situation is not much different from the general population at large, in a sense. Even with the number of deaths, if you look at how many people have sort of lost their lives during since the beginning of the war. At the beginning of the war, the Christian community was just a little over 1,000 people, 1,017 to be precise. And now it is reduced to approximately 650 people in a sense. There has been 42 deaths. 20 of them are related to the hostilities of the war. I mean, with the attack on the Greek Orthodox Church early in the war, 17 people lost their lives when the building collapsed. An additional 3 people were sniped, basically, 2 of them on our own premises in the Holy Family Church. In addition to the 20 who have been killed, in a sense, there are 22 other people who probably would have been with us today had there been proper medical attention. So no hospitals, no clinics, no medicines, and so on and so forth. So if you get sick, even a minor sickness in a sense that could be treated, most likely you will lose your life. So 22 additional people lost their lives unnecessarily in a sense. So 42 people out of 1,017, roughly, that's 4% of the community. So for any community to lose 4% in a span of under 1 year is devastating. And that, again, is a little higher than the general population. Gaza, having 40,000 people who have lost their lives, over 60% of them are children and women. So the level of destruction, the level of killing, the level of loss, basically is just nothing that we have seen in this land in recent history. And I'm old enough to have witnessed the 1967 war, basically thereafter 1973 war, the 2 intifadas, the crisis, everything that we've been through, in a sense, does not measure up to what we are going through now, in a sense. So As far as Gaza is concerned, this is the situation. Again, about 300 people left the Gaza Strip, primarily due to the difficulties of life there. And that is when the Rafah crossing was still open. So again, to lose 30% due to immigration, again, is another huge hit for the Christian community in Gaza. In addition, most of the Christian institutions have been destroyed. So as far as our schools are concerned, there are 5 Christian schools in Gaza. 4 of them are almost completely destroyed. The only standing one actually is our own Holy Family School, which is part of the parish complex, right next to the church, basically. And that is the only school that survived, basically. And primarily because, again, that is being used as a shelter. So at the present time, we have approximately 450 people who are taking shelter at our Holy Family Church in Gaza City, plus another 200 roughly Christians who are taking refuge at the Greek Orthodox Church. So between the 2 churches, that is where most of the Christian community is today. Of course, the difficulty is when the war stops. If it stops tomorrow, these people have no place to go back to. There's no home to go back to, in a sense. So the school, even if it is standing, will not be able to be used as a school in the near future until some housing is arranged for these people to go back to, in a sense. So it's quite a devastating, I think, scenario as far as the Gaza is concerned. Going quickly to the West Bank, and I know Leila will speak a bit more about the West Bank. There are 3 factors since the beginning of the war that have shot up unemployment through the roof. Basically, when you talk about the collapse of the tourism sector, and that is the livelihood of the Christian community, especially in the Bethlehem and Jerusalem areas. When you talk about the suspension of all permits to work in Israel, you're talking about 120,000 households who used to work in Israel on a daily basis. All of those permits, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, over 95% of those permits have been suspended since the beginning of the war, of course. And then the almost bankrupt Palestinian National Authority, again with 180,000 civil servants who are not getting paid since October. If they're getting paid, then 20% advance on the salary of November, December, or whatever it is. So if you put all these combined, the unemployment rate shot up dramatically and affected the Christian community unproportionately due to these factors, due to where they are, and so on and so forth. In addition, of course, to the settler violence, which I'm sure if you follow the news, you see how violent the settlers have become in recent months, leading to travel restrictions. So even if you have a job, if you live in an outlying village and you need to get to work on the West Bank, you're risking your life actually getting on the West Bank roads for the most part. Confiscation of land, land grabs, basically, that is unprecedented since the 1967 war. So there's not much left actually of the West Bank that has not been confiscated by the Israeli authorities for the primary purpose of establishing or expanding the existing settlements on the West Bank. So in practice, basically, the West Bank has been annexed unofficially, of course, because Israel does not want the world to react to a formal annexation of the West Bank, but in reality, on the ground, the West Bank has been annexed already, not formally, but for all practical purposes, that is the situation. As far as East Jerusalem is concerned, again, the loss of jobs in East Jerusalem has been great due to many jobs lost, primarily to closure of businesses, especially in the tourism industry. And what distinguishes this time compared to COVID, at least, during the COVID, the Israeli government was very generous in a sense of compensating businesses, individuals who have lost their employment, had to shut down their businesses or whatever. So economically, Israel did not distinguish between Arab, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or whatever, as far as getting support from the government back during the COVID times. At the present time, of course, anything that is Palestinian, anything that is non-Jewish, does not receive any governmental funding under the pretext, basically, that you haven't suffered. Those who have suffered are really those that are in reserve in the army, that have shut down their business to go and fight in Gaza or what have you. So if you're in those categories, you're being compensated generously from the government. But if you're simply shut down your restaurant because there are no tourists around or whatever, tough luck, no government support whatsoever. And this is what really has distinguished, I think, the COVID days and to the current situation. The demolition of homes in East Jerusalem continues unabated, unstopped, basically. And I think as far as the institutions are concerned, I think we're talking about a situation where the government is actively pursuing issues they haven't pursued in a very, very long time, in particular to property taxation as far as the churches are concerned. If we are to pay according to the Israeli law, property taxation, I guarantee you all the churches will go bankrupt tomorrow. We will not have the means to be able to pay up, basically. And that really goes back to the Ottoman Empire days, where we had exemptions from taxation, basically, provided that church institutions provide services to the community, whether it's in education, health, or social services. All that is being changed now without making a big deal out of it. And church institutions are now requested to pay taxation on properties unjustifiably and without an agreement between the Holy See and the State of Israel, in a sense. So put all those combined, basically you have a disaster situation as far as East Jerusalem is concerned. And I think one of the most, I think, difficult issues really is the polarization between the two societies. They have been drifting apart for a long time, but the polarization you feel between the Israeli society, the Arab society, Jews on one side, Muslims and Christians on the other side, is something we haven't seen to this level, at least in a very long time. And that is something that would take a very long time, I think, to fix. Moving to the interventions of the Latin Patriarchate, as far as Gaza is concerned, we have big dreams. Our Patriarch Cardinal Pizzaballa really has big dreams to do many things in Gaza when the situation allows it, whether in education, healthcare, social services. However, since the beginning of the war, we have received up to a maximum of 650 people as refugees in our complex, and trying to provide all their needs during the war period at a time when you're really under blockade, under bombardment. It truly has been a heroic effort as far as our people in Gaza are concerned. So we provide the means for them to be able to provide food, water, sanitation, hygiene packages, medicines as much as is available on the market, and so on and so forth. And we've been doing that faithfully since the beginning of the war. Once the war is over, again, as I said, we have plans to reestablish our educational enterprises, 2 schools at least in Gaza, clinics, medical clinics, and so on and so forth, and potentially also get engaged in housing projects, basically as a quick fix to the people to sort of encourage them to remain in Gaza, especially those that have lost everything. As far as the West Bank is concerned, initially in the first 2 months of the after the war, that is November, December, basically, it was all humanitarian support, social assistance, tuition support, food coupons, medicines, rental support, utility support, helping people pay their electric bills, water bills, and what have you, school tuition fees, and so on. But we couldn't continue to do basically the pure humanitarian stuff. And we had to recalibrate ourselves to engage in more empowerment programs, job creation programs, and that started actually in January. So starting in January, we continued to do the pure humanitarian at a reduced level, basically, for those who are the most in need, who have lost their employment in particular. But we shifted to job creation programs, internships, cash for work programs, and a way to get people to work and to earn a living, basically, during these difficult times. So most, if not all, of our projects, the capital development projects at the Latin Patriarchate were shifted or repurposed, in a sense, to be cash for work and job creation projects. We dumped the concept of one contractor does it all, in a sense, and we hired, local people basically to do the work, electricians, tilers, and so on and so forth. And that really generated, hundreds of jobs, probably at last count about 400 jobs, temporary jobs, between all of these categories combined, to put people to work and have a dignified income for them. And as far as the food coupons and all that pure humanitarian, the count really, we have reached over 12,000 people since the beginning of the war in terms of, supporting them. And we're proud really that we have engaged Friends of the Holy Land in having an emergency emergency edition, if you will, of the Afaq project with Bethlehem University. And that is, again, a job creation, internships, and starting employment, not starting businesses, basically, income generation projects. And we're very proud that we partnered in that emergency setting with Bethlehem University. That program was ending basically when the war started, and we started a new phase, which we call the emergency edition of the Afaq project, that basically is to empower people to either find employment or empower them to start some sort of a small business to sustain themselves. Thank you very much, and I will stop here.